Coming up on American Black Journal, we'll examine how federal funding cuts are affecting nonprofits right here in Michigan. And we'll tell you how one foundation has pledged to help fill the gap. Plus, this year's Arise Detroit Neighborhoods Day is taking on added significance as organizers remember the nonprofit's founder, the late Luther Keith. Stay where you are. American Black Journal starts right now.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the Cynthia and Elsa Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit PBS.
The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit PBS. Through our giving, we are committed to meeting the needs of the communities we serve statewide to help ensure a bright and thriving future for all. Learn more at dtefoundation.com.
Also brought to you by Nissan Foundation. And viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson, your host. Federal funding cuts that began in January are now starting to have an impact on the programs, services, and staff of nonprofits here in Michigan, and they are causing a lot of uncertainty about the future. In order to help fill the funding gaps, the McGregor Fund has decided to double its payout rate to the foundation's nonprofit partners over the next 2 years. Joining me now are McGregor Fund President Kate Levin Markel and Portia Roberson. She is the CEO of Focus Hope. Welcome to American Black Journal. I've wanted for a while to have this conversation, and I think now that we are, well into 2025, we can assess what's actually happening, what the impact of all this change in Washington is having on people here. Kate, I'm going to start with you. McGregor funds an awful lot of the organizations that are targets of some of these cuts in Washington. Let's start just with what you hear and see from your grantees about what this means.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be here. First, I like to think about how there are different things happening at once, and different partners are experiencing these different dynamics. So the first thing that happened was there were freezes on money owed to nonprofits that had already been allocated and put into contract and spent, because a lot of that funding gets paid by the federal government to organizations on a reimbursement basis.
Right.
So there were just refusals to make good on payments that were, frankly, for the most part, illegal because they'd been appropriated by the Congress. So those fights, because there have been pushbacks, are working their way through the courts. So some of that money's freeing up. But in the meantime, there's a starvation effect on organizations. Then there were different attempts to cut off funding, a little bit more in line with what we would consider normal. And then, of course, we have coming soon at us future cuts that are going to come out of this congressional budgeting process. So it's an enormous, complex mix of things. And I'm sure Portia will really be able to help us understand those dynamics as the leader of an organization that receives so many different types of funding. But before I turn it over to her, and I do want to hear, I'll just say this has touched people providing housing, people providing free and emergency food, people providing supports for people to get to work, people providing legal services, people supporting survivors of domestic violence. There are many examples, sadly, where this has really affected the whole social safety net.
The social safety net. That's
across the board.
Most of, or a lot of, the work that you're doing. That's why you're seeing this as closely as you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Portia, at Focus Hope, of course, you are part of that social safety net in a couple of different ways, but talk about the relationship between the services you provide and the federal funding you get, and what happens when that funding is in jeopardy.
So as Kate mentioned, the federal freeze on reimbursement dollars was the first, I guess, attack, so to speak. A Tuesday afternoon, we get word that the dollars have been frozen. I immediately get on a call with about 75 to 100 other providers of Head Start and Early Head Start, which is one of the components of what Focus Hope does. When I tell you there were literal tears being shed while we were on our Zoom call, because people in much smaller organizations were looking at having to close by the end of the day and lay off people. Focus Hope has about 107 staff members in our early learning program that would have to have been laid off within 2 to 3 days, maybe over the weekend. Maybe I would have 4 days to tell people what was going on, but otherwise we were looking at having to close that portion of Focus Hope. We then got exempted out, so it's a roller coaster of a day in terms of emotions and what you're thinking you might have to do. There was a moment when I closed my door and just sort of cried for a moment and then opened the door back to try to figure out what to do next. And so for that period of time, we were exempted out of the freeze, and then subsequently those freezes were lifted for a time being. But now we're in the situation where we have a grant application for Head Start and Early Head Start, and we've not heard whether or not we're getting it or not. So currently we're operating until July 31st, but we don't know quite yet what's going to happen after that.
Yeah.
The same was true for our senior food program, our commodity supplemental food program. We were unsure. We got in the extension of the 24-25 budget, we got extended, so we knew we were going to be funded there through September. We now are seeing that there was some money reintroduced into this new budget that's coming along, because there was a point where it was zeroed out. There was no commodity supplemental food program. So 43,000 seniors in 9 counties in Michigan that are fed by Focus Hope each month, no food for
You don't know.
Right.
You don't know what
Right.
the future is. Of course, if you talk to the folks in Washington who are doing this, they say, well, we have this tremendous spending problem in government. We overspend terribly, and we have to cut back. And I keep hearing also, other people can do this, right? Other people than government, other sources than government can provide these services, and they will if we pull back. Is that a reasonable way to think about how this all works?
No.
We fill the gap?
No.
No. Why?
Oh. Well, if you think about it, the government support for all of these critical functions is so large that individuals and foundations just don't have enough funding to pay for it without a major redistribution of wealth in this country, or the largesse of the people with the most money. Right. Now, the reason these cuts are being made is to pay for tax cuts, which very disproportionately help high-earning and high-asset folks. Mm-hmm. So we can pay for those services, but we can't pay for them and then reduce the tax revenue coming in. So this is a values decision. Yeah. This is not just fiscal prudence. This is a values decision. And the way in which it's being done is not the traditional democratic process that we all deserve.
Yeah. So let's talk about the effect of McGregor doubling what it is going to make available to grantees over the next 2 years. What effect might that have, and what's the strategy, I guess, there in terms of how it fits in with the cuts that people are going to be facing?
I am really pleased to have an opportunity to talk about that. But before I start, I'd like to ask you, Portia, what is your annual budget for the most recent year?
About $39-40 million. So there's no way that we could go out and find a foundation that could supplement that, or that could continue funding us at that level in order to do the work that we do. And I was at a discussion, and somebody, I think it might have been Wendy Jackson from Kresge said we can go for about 72 days helping out a nonprofit, and then we're out, like we can't do it anymore. So there are no long-term solutions outside of the federal government continuing to fund some of these programs. And I think what ultimately becomes the issue is that there are real people on the other ends of this. This is not some obscure thing that we just want to do. This is people who, again, throughout 9 counties in Southeast Michigan need our food every month, right? These are seniors who are food insecure. These are families who rely on early Head Start programs, and not just in urban communities, because I think sometimes the language becomes what happens in Detroit. You know, Head Start is a vital part of rural communities. Like, there are no other options in those communities. And so one of the things I've been talking about with a lot of our employer partners is I can give you the best employee in the world, and they want to have that job. But they probably have 3 days of finding somebody to stand in the gap of a Head Start or early Head Start program. I always say, I'm never going to encourage a parent to leave a 10-year-old at home with a 4-year-old so that they can go to work. That's just not something I'm willing to do, because we know how dangerous that is. So we need programs like Head Start or early Head Start so that this workforce that the government talks about wanting to create, this, you know, everybody's going to come back to these American jobs. Yeah, from where if they don't have childcare?
Yeah. So $39-40 million a year just for Focus Hope.
Right.
Compare that to how much
Exactly right.
How much does McGregor grant to organizations overall?
In a typical year, we grant $9 million.
Right. So not even close to just what one organization needs.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I'd love to answer the questions, because we really believe in transparency. And so we doubled our commitment of funding back in March when it was clear what was happening in the community. We had a meeting with our board and our team, and we said we just have to do more than we traditionally do.
Yeah.
So historically, we've granted out about 5%, maybe 5.5% of our endowment value every year. So that endowment value fluctuates with investment markets. Sure. But this is not unusual for philanthropy that's set up to last in perpetuity.
Yeah.
But we just said, we know we can't make up the difference, but that doesn't take us off the hook from doing everything we can. We all need to pitch in and do what we can. A lot of us need to advocate. A lot of us need to step up other ways of supporting community. And as a funding organization, our job is to dig deeper and just get more money out. So we feel that clearly, and everyone was in clear agreement around it. And so we're doing our best. We can't sit back just because, we can't fill the gaps, or, we can't figure out how to give more money out quickly and perfectly. We're doing our best. Yeah. We're starting with our current partners, trying to identify immediate cash needs, where even buying a few weeks or a few months might keep people in housing, might keep people fed. And more importantly, for the long run, well, I shouldn't say more importantly, but keep people employed in those jobs. Right. Because if you have to lay off your team, you just can't get them back 2 weeks later when the funding comes back. People have had to move on and support themselves. Mm-hmm. So we can't afford to let people suffer, and we can't afford an erosion of our nonprofit safety net, which is what is at stake, as you explained. Yeah. So we have a lot of different things we're trying to do. Happy to give more examples or another conversation.
No, we've only got about 30 seconds left. And of course, we're going to have you guys back at some point to talk more about where we are, because this is not ending. Just quickly, how big a threat is it that Focus Hope would have to stop these services if we don't?
It's huge. I mean, I talked about the 107 employees. Yeah. But there are 300 families that will be affected immediately if we have to shut our doors, right? If we have to cut off the early Head Start and Head Start program. So it's not, it's a huge community of folks that are looking for places that are safe, that are educational based to put their children every day. It's what we should be providing for them, right? And so, I think about our staff, but I also think about those families who are now thrust into a community that they have no safety net around their children.
Yeah. Okay, great to have both of you here. We will be following up later as well to find out where all this goes.
Thank you, bro. Thanks for having.
Up next, we're going to get the details on this year's Arise Detroit Neighborhoods Day. But first, here's a clip from a 1991 episode of Detroit Black Journal that examines the impact of massive cuts to the state budget back then.
State Representative Kilpatrick, how was general assistance targeted by Governor Engler, and how did the proponents of general assistance allow this to happen?
Unfortunately, when the governor came into office, he announced that he was going to eliminate general assistance. We knew then in January, and the announcement came shortly after the November election, we knew in January when we reconvened in a new session of the House of Representatives that we had a fight on our hands. There was much discussion, much disillusionment, and then out of all of it, the final vote being 55 to 50 in the House of Representatives on October 10th, I think it was, that did eliminate the general assistance program, unfortunately for our state. But I want to say more. What we're seeing is a national turn away from our people concept, from our leaders of this country and this state. I think general assistance is just a piece of that. If you look at the total budget and the vetoes that were just announced and sustained last week, we see that women's programs have been cut and eliminated. We see that disabled children and mental health people's services have been disallowed and eliminated. We see many workers in a flux wondering if they'll have a job next week. And I'm here to say, unfortunately, Cliff, we have not seen the brunt of this budget. The Wayne County and the city of Detroit will lose $500 million from what we had received in our last year's allocations.
The 19th annual Arise Detroit Neighborhoods Day takes place on Saturday, August 2nd. This year's theme for the citywide celebration is a day of pride and power. Community groups, block clubs, faith-based institutions, and others will all host improvement projects, giveaways, art and music festivals, resource fairs, and more. This year's event will honor the memory and legacy of Arise Detroit's late founder and executive director, Luther Keith. Here to tell us more is the vice chair of Arise Detroit's board of directors, Dr. George Swan III. George, great to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Every year for the last, decade or more, I have had a conversation with Luther in advance of Neighborhoods Day. Right. It's a sad moment, I guess, that I'm talking to you this year instead of him. But, I am glad that you're here, and I'm really glad that this is still a powerful and important event in Detroit. And Luther would want that.
He is an inspiration behind this, but also inspiring so many other people. Yeah. We grew before the pandemic. Yeah. They had more than 400 different organizations giving simultaneously their events on a single day.
On a single day.
And if you think about that, this is the only such event in the country.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of good organizations that are making attempts to do neighborhood cleanups. They're doing things to bring together certain communities. They're able to inspire all types of activities, but not on the same day citywide.
Right.
And you think about the power that suggests. It all came from a vision of Luther saying, we ought to be part of the change. Yeah. Let's do something that's going to be creative, inspirational, that's going to bring people together, bridge the intergenerational gaps. And it's kind of hard with his infectious nature to tell Luther no.
Yeah, it was impossible.
It's impossible. No, right? And so I know.
You tried.
I tried. Yeah. But
so let's talk about this year and what might be different about Neighborhoods Day. I suspect there will be a very different feeling about the celebrations this year. But every year Luther would talk about things that maybe weren't going to have, what maybe we're having this year that didn't happen the year before.
Well, first of all, we have gotten back in the growth mode. So right after the pandemic, or during the pandemic, we had a whole experience of create in your own space.
Right.
So it's sort of like you couldn't see each other. We also knew that there were people who were very comfortable and some who were not very comfortable in having public events and doing things. And so that became a very constraining kind of period of time.
Sure.
But now we are growing and more people seem to be interested in celebrating Luther's legacy. And they're signing up, and the joy of it is that there is a sense of excitement, of energy, of compassion and commitment that this is indeed going to continue. And we're looking at the 20th as being a little celebration of the fact that this all started out with a dream on a napkin.
Right?
Luther would tell the story.
Right.
You know, he just said, something has to change. And so be part of the change. He actually came up with a word that we were using called arisification.
Yeah, I've heard him use that.
Yeah, and the idea is that it's not just a static kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing movement.
Right.
And so we have to encourage people to be part of the change, to arise, to embrace arisification,
Right.
not just on that one day, but throughout their lives and throughout their communities.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing when you think of the fact that there are so many organizations, so many people who are looking at creative ways of expressing themselves.
Yes.
So whether it's music, whether it's cleanups, whether it's doing volunteer work, whether it's helping seniors, helping young people learn new skills, whether it's artists who are having their own art shows and try and do demonstrations.
Might know a little of
I
that.
might know a little bit of that. Yeah. A shameless plug, I ducks one. But the idea is that they're doing things that help to educate, to enlighten, to create some joy and sense of satisfaction in being part of the city, being part of communities, and being able to know each other. You know, we live in an environment where a lot of folk don't know the person who lives next door to them.
Right.
And so this brings people into their yards, on their porches, into the streets, into parks, and to places that hopefully they will continue to use and to communicate with each other, to facilitate the
Even if it's just to say hello.
Just to say hello.
Right.
It's amazing. I remember there was a time when I first got onto the board, and I tried to get to so many events at one time. See, I mean, I could make. And it was interesting. I was driving all across the city. It was. And I was like, oh, right. Because different events start at different times.
Right.
You know, I was speeding somewhere and thinking, how am I going to tell law enforcement, well, I'm doing this because we're Rise Detroit. You know, I get special dispensation. I don't, you know, you can't stop me now. I've got to make it there. But this just tells you the kind of energy. And people are doing things, and we're a small organization.
Yeah.
That's the other side to it.
Yeah.
Is that Luther ran a very tight ship, a very small staff ship.
Right.
But we had hundreds of volunteers.
Yeah.
And that's the magic of it all.
Yeah.
Is that you don't have to pay people to do things that express their joy, express their satisfaction, and their love.
It's just incredible.
It is. It really is.
So I want to talk just a little about the organization and its future. You know, lots of people start lots of things, and when they're gone, there's sometimes a question about, well, can we continue this? And it's really good to see that Arise just is rolling on. It keeps going.
If we didn't have Arise, we had to create an organization like
we would have to.
That's right.
Invent it.
That's right. And it's not to say there aren't other organizations that are trying to do, or doing, not trying, they're doing things that are similar, but again, they're very unique, they're very individual, they're singular types of things. Yeah. And we have a commitment as part of the board, as well as part of the organization, to ensure this continues, that legacy of Luther. Yeah. That risification, that we have people understand they can be part of the change. Yeah. And so we are committed to celebrate it. We are committed to maintain to continue it. And we're planning now for the 20th Rise Stories Neighborhoods Day. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. What do you tell people who want to do this, who maybe haven't participated before? Because each year you have more people.
That's right.
Who stand up and say, our neighborhood is going to be part of this. What do you tell them about that energy to just go and do it, to not worry about whether it's going to work or whether it's going to be big or small, just to lean into the idea of it?
What's nice is that there's no sanctioned event. There's no authority from on high telling you what to do. But we do make sure you want to do things that are safe for people.
Right.
That you ensure
no fireworks shows.
No fireworks shows, you know, no running off of pulling off of bridges, things like that. But you can do things that are very simple, even in your own yard.
Yeah.
Planting flowers, showing young people how to grow vegetables. Those are the kinds of things that you can start small.
Yeah.
You can cleaning up a park, being able to go pick up the trash along a block or a street, and then having others walk along with you while you do that. Those are the kinds of things that help build a community. They're all possible. So it doesn't mean that you have to have thousands of volunteers, you have to have a budget of millions of dollars. You can start with a budget of zero, and your feet and your arms and your hands and your thoughts and your energy, and you can make it happen.
Yeah. All right. Well, George, it is great to have you here. We look forward to Neighborhoods Day and great things from Arise Detroit.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that'll do it for us this week. You can find out more about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org, and you can connect with us anytime on social media. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the Cynthia and Elsa Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit PBS.
The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit PBS. Through our giving, we are committed to meeting the needs of the communities we serve statewide to help ensure a bright and thriving future for all. Learn more at dtefoundation.com.
Also brought to you by Nissan Foundation. And viewers like you. Thank you.